Yes, I understand. She called me from the county jail, Pop told me. I could hear sadness in his voice. She claims they are charging her with conspiracy to commit murder. Is this true? I am afraid it is, Pop, I replied. I captured it on video. I cannot believe it, he said. She would agree with something like that. Pop, I sighed, she did. Anyway, the authorities now have control of the situation. Who else knows? Pop asked. Her boss, Wilson Langley. I told him only a few minutes ago. I also spoke with Alan Williams' wife in New York and my lawyer, I informed him. This is going to cause a media expletive show, probably, Pop said. Expletive, like I usually do, Pop chuckled at that. We'll get through this, Pop finally replied. Thank you for informing me. You are welcome, I replied. I felt horrible for the old man after seeing he wasn't to blame for what his daughter had done. So I better start going, Pop finally asked. Let me know if you hear anything, all right? Pop, have a nice evening. Give my best to Mom. I added, before hanging up the phone, staring out the sliding glass doors that led to the balcony. The sun had set, and I noticed the city's glittering lights. I felt relieved after the events of the day and wanted to do something, anything. I felt like checking out and returning home, but I realized the restraining order was still in effect. I wouldn't be shocked if Allison's private investigators were waiting to see if I tried to sneak back after the conspirators were apprehended. Feeling the effects of cabin fever, I absolutely had to leave the room before I went crazy, so I went downstairs, purchased another cigar, and settled back by the pool to enjoy the cool night air, a drink, and a smoke. After a few hours, I returned to my room, slipped under the covers, and slept like a baby. I awoke later than usual the next morning, so I showered, shaved, and went about my customary routine before heading downstairs for breakfast. I had nothing planned for the day but to await Allison's news, so I took a leisurely tour around downtown before returning to my room. The knock came after I had barely been back a few moments, and I had not expected anyone to arrive. I grabbed my pistol and peered through the peephole. I observed two men wearing shoddy suits and insignia on their belts. "Who is it?" I inquired. "Police Department, Mr. Jacobs." "We would like to speak with you," a man replied. "Hold up your credentials so that I can view them," I demanded. "More than just your badges." They exchanged glances, shrugged their shoulders, and held out their official police credentials. While reading their box tops, I discovered they were Detectives Johnson and Carraway. I met Johnson a few years ago at a fundraiser for the widows and orphans of officers slain in the line of duty. I'd never met Carraway, but I knew of his reputation. I chose to take a chance they were the real stuff and holstered my weapon. "Just a second," I told them while cracking the door open. I surveyed the hall in both directions before inviting them inside. "Just to let you know, there is a loaded weapon in the room," I informed them, "but it has been holstered and rendered safe." "Mr. Jacobs," one of the detectives stated, "we had expected this. We know you're a former federal agent with permission to carry." "We only have a few inquiries about your wife and a couple of her colleagues," Johnson said. "All right, come in. Would you want some coffee?" I asked. "Sure, black please," Detective Johnson said. Carraway repeated his allegation. So I poured them each a cup of the boiling black brew. They took a cautious sip before curling their lips in disdain. "Damn, do you call this trash coffee?" Carraway asked. I told him that was what it said on the package. "It tastes nice to me." "Yeah, you are a former Fed, right?" Johnson responded with a wry smirk. I asked him to have a seat before sitting on the bed. "So what can I do to help the city's finest?" I asked. "We're here to discuss the charges against your wife, Samantha Jacobs, her attorney Allison Cartwright, and a colleague, Alan Williams," Johnson said. "I figured that," I said half-jokingly. "What would you like to know?" "Mrs. Jacobs has filed for divorce against you, claiming adultery. She claims that this is all a great misunderstanding." You claim you called in the report out of vengeance, Carraway stated while gazing at his notebook. I assume you haven't seen the video? I replied. Both of them glanced at me in amazement. Apparently, they had not watched the video. I take that as a no, am I correct? We are unaware of any video, Johnson said. Now, take a look at this chap. I would offer you some popcorn, but I don't have any right now, I joked. I opened the footage on my laptop and showed it to the detectives. They were startled as the three conspirators casually talked about murdering me if I didn't cooperate with their plan. They also noted Alan's desire to load something into my computer. Any idea what's on William's small thumb drive? Johnson asked. I told him it was most likely illegal spicy videos because Williams was detained with them. You may undoubtedly locate it in the county jail alongside the rest of his belongings. We'll have to go check it out, Carraway informed Johnson, who agreed instantaneously. Can you send us a copy of every video you have of them? Johnson asked me. Sure, I responded. I will give you a copy of everything I have, including a video of my talk with Cartwright at Luigi's. Thanks, that would be a huge help, Johnson remarked, handing me a thumb drive. I copied everything and handed the drive back. When is the arraignment? I asked. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Johnson stated. In fact, the district attorney asked us to extend an invitation to you as he may need to ask you a few questions. I will be there, I told him. Only one suggestion, you might wish to dig deeper into Cartwright. I believe this isn't her first time doing something like this. What made you say that? Carraway asked. I chatted with Samantha's first husband, Alvin Morrison. Cartwright played the same trick on him. If you want, I can provide you Morrison's contact information. Please do, Johnson said. According to Johnson, the two detectives exchanged looks as I wrote down Alvin's details. I also showed them Allison's images from both divorce trials. Something interesting indeed, Carraway stated. Okay, Mr. Jacobs, we'll talk to this Morrison character, see what he says. I appreciate your cooperation, Johnson said. My pleasure, I told him. One more thing, Mr. Jacobs, consider this a word to the wise. I am aware of your reputation. You are no longer a federal agent. Pulling a weapon on a court officer is not the best idea, no matter how justified you feel. Leave it to us, we will take care of everything from here. Got it? I received it, Detective Johnson, I answered with a smile. We all shook hands, and I led them to the door. It was lunchtime, so I ordered a sandwich from room service and ate while watching television. Later that afternoon, Alex called to inform me that Judge Banks had not only revoked the restraining order but also lifted the block on my accounts and ordered Samantha to restore 30% of the money she had taken. He is also sending Cartwright to the bar in the state attorney's office for her unethical conduct, Alice commented. You've been busy, I told her. I was just warming up, cowboy, Alice reacted with a small chuckle. I intend to file your response and divorce papers tomorrow. Things are about to get out of hand. So, what happens now? I asked. I'll take care of collecting the monies from Samantha. You work on the checklist I gave you, Alice spoke. That should take you the remainder of the afternoon. Prepare to move back into your home tomorrow morning. Actually, I'd prefer to move back in today, I stated. I need to change the locks and evict Samantha from my home. I've been invited by the district attorney. Samantha's arraignment is tomorrow morning. Will you be there? Not unless you need me there. If they release any of them on bail, I will require a restraining order, I told her. According to what I've heard, the district attorney is going to recommend that they be detained until their trial, Alice spoke. However, the judge's decision is unpredictable. All right. I will be there just in case. Thank you, I responded. As I ended the phone call to Alice and called Pop. Hello, boy. How are things in your world? The older man asked in his customary caustic tone. I am doing better, Pop. Thank you for asking. Listen, the restraining order has been withdrawn, and I intend to return to the house tonight. Do you think you can get some of your staff over there to fetch Samantha's items out? Yes, I can do that, he said. Do you think she'll be out on bail soon? Not based on what I've heard, Pop. But you never know with certain judges, isn't that a fact? I hissed. What time do you need the truck there? I would say around 4:30. It shouldn't take long to put her trash into some rubbish bags. Pop chuckled at that. Mike, do you realize you're a great class act? He humorously inquired. I learned from the best, Pop, I joked back. Yes, you did. And don't forget that, we both laughed about it. All right, I'll invite some people over around 4 o'clock. Please keep me updated on the arraignment. I will, I promised. We terminated the call, and I went to the bank to make the necessary modifications to my accounts. Then I went to the office to handle things with HR. While there, I checked in with my supervisor, Jack Iverson. How's everything going? He asked. Progressing, I said. I had the restraining order lifted and my bank account unfrozen. Samantha and her co-conspirators were detained last night, arrested, Jack inquired, shocked. Yeah, murderous conspiracy and extortion. I've heard that further charges may be forthcoming. The arraignment takes place tomorrow morning, and the district attorney, does anyone want you to come? Yes, he may call on me. I do not know yet. I hope things work out, Jack mentioned. You were returning home today, that is my plan. Let me know how things go, Jack stated. I will, I told him before I left. I returned to the motel, checked out, and drove home. Home, my castle, my escape from the circus show that is life. I pulled into the garage, closed the door, and proceeded to the kitchen. However, before walking inside, I drew my revolver. I didn't expect any unpleasant shocks, but I wasn't going to take chances. I carefully entered and turned off the security alarm. The place appeared gloomy and quiet. Too dark, too quiet, to be honest. The only sound in the house came from the big antique grandfather clock in the living room. I carefully checked the area to ensure that no one was waiting for me. Finally sure that the location was secure, I took my firearm and carefully moved my belongings upstairs, putting them away before taking a shower and changing into something more casual. At 4 p.m., I heard a large truck pull into my driveway and looked out the window. I observed 3 males climb out and approach the door. I let them in, handed them a package of enormous 30-gallon plastic trash bags, and showed them to Samantha's closet. One of the men began packing her things into bags, while another emptied her drawers and put her toiletries in another. I showed the third man around the place, pointing out furniture, pots, pans, dishes, CDs, and other stuff Samantha had brought from her condo. They used to be rather busy after exorcising Samantha from the premises. I unlocked my office door and examined everything within. Everything appeared to be in good working order, so I turned on my entire home sound system. Soon the distinctive noises of vintage tile filled the house. Yes, I was home, deal with it, I thought about pigs. I took out my phone and contacted the locksmith. SS suggested I acknowledge the late hour and offer to pay more for the man's services. He hesitantly agreed, saying he'd be right over. The last thing I wanted or needed was Samantha or her collaborators having access to my home if they were released on bond. The locksmith arrived a half hour later and began work. A few hours later, the 3 men reported that they had finished. By then, the locksmith had changed all of the door's locks and was cheerfully on his way with a small bundle of cash. I went through the place with the 3 men and checked to make sure they had everything. How about the pictures on the wall? The man whom I assumed was the lead inquired, pointing to the several images of Samantha and me that adorned the premises. Nah, I told him, I need kindling to start my fireplace tonight. They all laughed about it. Could you do me a favor, please? What's that, Mr. Jacobs? First and foremost, call me Mike. I was hoping you wouldn't mind taking the mattress off the bed in the master bedroom. What do you want us to do with this? The lead inquired. Maybe throw it in the trash, burn it, whatever. I do not care. I do not want it. I assumed I'd sleep in the guest room and purchase a new mattress tomorrow. No way was I going to sleep on that mattress. Samantha's infidelity tarnished her reputation. Sure, I understand, Mike, the lead stated. Give me a hand, he spoke to the other two males. Thanks, I am grateful, I told him. They dragged the old mattress down the stairs and put it into the back of the vehicle. I thanked them for their efforts and handed them each $100 cash. What the hell? I thought. They worked hard and deserved something more. We said our goodbyes, and I watched as they left with Samantha's belongings. Returning to the interior of the house, I took in the vacant spaces that had previously been occupied by Samantha's belongings. Well, I thought, this as well, so it will pass. Tired and a little hungry, I ordered lasagna from Luigi's. The lady who took my order told me it would take around an hour for delivery. That was fine with me because I could take the time to unwind. Armed with a fresh cup of Keurig brewed coffee, I sat in my recliner and turned on the television to keep up with the news. A few minutes later, my phone rang, and I realized it was a call from Ron Wiseman. Mike Jacobs, you're an old dog. How is it hanging? He asked. I just went back into the house, exorcised the witch, and kicked back. What have you got for me? You'll be relieved to know that despite being Pat Witherspoon's daughter, I discovered no links between your wife and the old Mississippi. I did, however, discover linkages between the old organization and the lawyer Allison Cartwright. My interest piqued, yes? It was approximately 8 or 9 years ago. She went by another name, Ellen Griswold, used to work in upstate New York. According to Witherspoon's notes, she disagreed with some of the group's more aggressive methods against cheaters. She was fine with punishing the males they targeted, but she reportedly thought some of the other actions were excessive. When the organization became politicized, she opted to leave. Mona Larson let her go. Strangely enough, she departed New York, changed her identity, and underwent some cosmetic surgery. But there is more. I discovered a document from Larson in which she considered a hit on Griswold. It was never carried out. Larson was removed from the contract only a few days after the memo was drafted. Very fascinating. I replied, I agreed. Ron claimed she may have left the organization, but she never gave up on the idea. However, adulterous husbands should be punished. She has worked with Hempstead for the past 8 years, managing divorce cases. So far, she has solely represented women. I'm looking into those cases, and it appears that nearly 90% of them include adultery. How many cases has she handled thus far? I asked. On average, she takes roughly 80 cases per year. Do the math. 80 instances every year for 8 years, that's 640 cases, Ron explained. Give or take, there is more. I discovered her identity was linked to over 500 bank accounts across the country. I'm still digging into all of that, but it appears she has access to approximately $25 million, I said. Yeah, and guess what? She set up the accounts for the ladies she represents. Samantha had such an account set up with her first husband, I added. Have you provided this information to the district attorney? I asked. Yes, I just hung up the phone with him. You will be looking into that as well, Ron replied. That's correct. That was established after your departure. Divorce Investigative Unit. Ray OOA, your old buddy, runs it. I anticipate that one of his representatives will pay you a visit within the next day or two. Thank you for the heads up, I said. As I mentioned, this explains a lot. I couldn't help but wonder what the DEA may do with this knowledge. Is there something else? I asked. Not at this moment, Ron said. I'm still accumulating and organizing data. It may take some time to piece all of this together. However, there is something I don't grasp, I told Ron. Why didn't Larson administer the old poison capsule to her? Isn't that how she usually handled loose ends? I asked. Yes, it was, particularly at the conclusion. However, Griswold departed the organization before Larson started implementing it on a large basis. Thus, she was never implanted, at least that's what I gleaned from Witherspoon's notes, Ron explained. Do you believe Samantha was aware of Cartwright's history? I asked. I doubt that, Mike. But I'm quite sure that's what Cartwright is currently doing. She had to. You're probably correct. Anything else, Mike? Ron inquired. I believe I'm only scratching the surface of Cartwright's work. I will know a lot more in the following 24 to 48 hours, I stated. Okay, thanks Ron, I appreciate it. How are you and Amy doing, by the way? I asked. We are doing fantastic, thank you for asking. Her knife-throwing abilities improve with each new executive her company recruits, Ron joked. I bet they are, I quipped. On the plus side, the number of sexual harassment accusations has almost completely decreased, Ron said, partly jokingly. We concluded the call, and I returned to the television. My meal arrived quickly, and I ate my lasagna while watching an old John Wayne film. I followed up with a beer and a smoke. I suppose this is when guys in my circumstances wax philosophical about life, love, and the meaning of the universe, which according to the old movie is 42 or something similar. Yes, I am sad and severely upset, but I am not formed that way. I'm more of a just the facts, ma'am sort. So here are the facts. The simple conclusion is that Samantha cheated on me and then attempted to frame me as the bad guy, going so far as to hook up with an unethical lawyer. Then she sought to steal my property and most of my possessions, using falsified evidence. To make matters worse, Mom agreed to Allison's plan to kill me if I didn't cooperate. On top of that, I discovered she had done this to another man. She was successful in that situation, and I assumed she expected to be successful with me. However, she made a serious mistake. You see, I don't like losing arguments. I suppose I could have run a background check before we married, but when you're in love with a woman, you don't consider such things. And yes, I was once in love with Samantha. I trusted her, maybe a lot. However, this is no longer relevant. Samantha made a terrible mistake, and she now has to pay the consequences. Perhaps, after all, I believed she had inherited certain characteristics from her birth mother. I remember informing Allison that they had declared war. The first phase of my counteroffensive was completed, the restraining order was lifted, the freeze on my accounts has been lifted, and I'm back in my own home. Samantha has been exiled from my personal kingdom and is presently in jail. I meant to do whatever it took to keep her and her two co-conspirators there for as long as humanly feasible. Tomorrow a.m., I assumed that was phase 2 of the counteroffensive. I would attend her arraignment, and if the district attorney calls on me to answer questions, I'll gladly tell the court what I know. After finishing my cigar, I went upstairs, undressed, and slid under the bed sheets in my guest room. It felt lovely to be home and in my own bed, even if it's in a guest bedroom. But the place appeared empty without Samantha. I brushed that notion aside and determined to handle this as if it were an intervention, which meant putting aside my emotions. Tomorrow is another day, but from this point on, I'd be in charge, and I don't like losing arguments. The next morning, I got up, dressed, and grabbed a cup of coffee before going to court. I wanted to watch the three conspirators when they were carried into the courtroom. I was surprised to see Alice, my lawyer, enter the courtroom. "How are you doing, Mike?" she asked. "Better now that I'm back in my own home," I replied with a smile. "That's great to hear. I wanted to be present to assist you, in case," Alice informed me. "I appreciate it," I replied with a smile. The double doors opened, and a line of orange-clad Captain Ives was led into the chamber. Allison, Samantha, and Alan were amongst them, and they didn't appear to be very happy. Tough crap. Samantha's hair was a mess, and she had circles under her eyes. Allison did not look any better. "All rise," the huge uniformed BFF commanded. We rose up as the Honorable Wilfred Stone entered the courtroom with his long black robe and folders under his arms. The judge nodded as he sat down, signaling the bailiff to take a seat. He placed an order. Judge Stone began at one end of the line, and I couldn't help but observe how harsh he was with the orange-clad individuals in front of him before meeting Samantha and her three buddies. He seemed to have been unfamiliar with the term bail. However, a well-dressed man and woman I hadn't seen in 10 years entered the courtroom and approached the district attorney. I recognized the man as the United States Attorney Ronald Sharp. I had interacted with him before while in the service. Julie Bacham was stationed at the task force's Denver office while I was in active service. I had worked with her several times and was quite impressed. Furthermore, she was a beautiful brunette. I was impressed by how she maintained herself over time. While Ronald chatted with the district attorney, Julie approached me, and I couldn't help but smile as she extended her hand. "Mike, it's nice to see you again," Julie responded with a smile. "I apologize," Special Agent Julie Bacham of the ATF told Alice while clutching her credentials. "I am with the Divorce Investigation Unit. Do you mind if we step out for a second?" "Sure," Alice spoke. We stood and exited the courtroom before Judge Stone could order us out. Ron was still talking to the DA, and I could tell he was not pleased. "What's happening?" I asked Julie. "There have been some developments," Julie stated. "Currently, the feds are handling the case against Allison Cartwright, Alan Williams, and your wife. So this is a task force issue, right?" I asked. "Not exactly," Julie stated. "The FBI and a few other agencies are investigating this issue, but we've got a dog in this hunt. I met with Ron Wiseman earlier, and he said there was nothing for the task force." "What happened?" I asked, confused. "He discovered some alarming stuff after you two chatted. They handed them over to us, and we took it from there. You can probably figure out what occurred next. Anyway, it seems that Allison was running her own small version of the old Miz, and Samantha was assisting her." "Damn, what is Williams' part in this?" I asked. "He was along for the ride and had primarily arranged for the muscle to do the dirty work, as Julie put it." "So what happens now?" Alex asked. "Federal marshals are poised to apprehend all three. They will be taken to Washington, D.C., Julie stated. The federal grand jury is investigating the cases against them." "What exactly are they being charged with?" I asked. "Racketeering, extortion, money laundering, and many conspiracy crimes, including plot to murder you, for starters. But the most serious charge is murder. Allison appears to have had some of her own people cooperate. Mark has been taken out. Samantha, as far as we can determine, was fully aware of the situation. Overall, the argument is quite complicated." "What about William?" I asked. "The evidence we uncovered suggests he orchestrated the accidents that killed two guys," Julie added. "It looks like a third man has died, thanks to Williams. The U.S. Attorney wants to execute all three of them. Do you suppose you might be able to visit Mrs. Jacobs before they are taken away?" Alice inquired. "I have divorce papers to offer her." "I will see what I can do," Julie informed her before looking at me. "I won't have to report back to Fort Apache for a few days, Mike. Do you think we could get together someday?" I got the hint. We had connected the few times we had met previously and experienced a mutual attraction. Nonetheless, the task force enforces rigorous rules against field agents. "In fact, I feel I owe you dinner," I said. "That's correct, do you?" Julie spoke with a small smile. "How about tonight, Luigi?" I hinted. "They make amazing lasagna, and after all these years, do you remember how much I adore lasagna?" she asked. Of course, I informed her. Julie grinned as she wrote something on the back of the business card she gave me. "This is my personal phone number in my present location. How about 6:30 p.m. sound?" "I will be there," I told her while pocketing the card. "I guess we should go back inside," Alice spoke. We returned to the courtroom and saw the district attorney and the lawyer for the three conspirators speaking with the judge. We took our old seats, and Julie approached the two enormous federal marshals, engaging them in quiet conversation. I watched them look at each other, shrug their shoulders, and nod. I just spoke with the marshals. They told you may meet with Julie for a few minutes before they took her away, Julie whispered as she returned to us. I thanked her just as the discussion at the judge's bench ended, and Judge Stone hammered his gavel before speaking. Detainees Jacob Cartwright and Williams, you are hereby ordered to surrender to federal marshals who will transfer you to Washington, D.C., where you will be held until a federal grand jury concludes its inquiry, he said, nodding to the bailiff who released the three conspirators from the rest. The two marshals promptly handcuffed and escorted them away, nodding to Julie. Come on, Julie replied, standing up. Alice and I followed, meeting the marshals outside a small room behind the courtroom. 5 minutes, one of the marshals spoke. Allison and Alan glanced down at the floor, their hands shackled behind their backs. That's all we need, Alan stated. Thank you. We entered the room and saw Samantha sitting at a table with her hands shackled to a metal ring on the table. One of her colleagues from Hempstead sat beside her. Samantha looked up as we stepped in. Hello, Samantha, I said. I hope you're enjoying your short adventure. Screw you, Samantha replied quietly. I chuckled in answer. Not today, Samantha. Never again, actually, I said. What do you want? The man next to her asked. You must be her attorney, Alice spoke. Yes, John Ashcraft, Hempstead Legal Group, the man replied. Okay, Mr. Ashcraft, I'm Alice Hawkins, Mr. Jacobs' counsel, and I'm here to serve divorce papers on your client, Alice said. Accomplish what you came to. Accomplish, John instructed. Al turned to Samantha and dropped the papers on the table. Samantha Jacobs, have you been served? Alice spoke. Samantha agreed, saying, whatever. John took up the papers and went through them. This is my client's answer to the ridiculous and illegal petition your client served on him, which was based on completely falsified evidence presented by an unethical attorney who is now facing many felony charges, including extortion and conspiracy to commit murder. I have recommended that the court dismiss her petition. You should tell your customer to sign the paperwork right away. Everything is in compliance with the prenuptial agreement your client signed prior to marriage. There's also the issue of the money your client stole from the joint account. Those funds must be refunded immediately, otherwise I'll have to charge your client with stealing. Here is a copy of the order requiring the return of that money if you haven't seen it yet, she said, dropping another paper on the table, which John picked up and read. Mrs. Jacobs has granted me power of attorney over her affairs, so I will handle this as quickly as feasible. Miss Hawkins, is there anything else? Yes, I interjected, gazing at Samantha. Why, Sam? What the hell happened? Samantha gazed up at me, seeming like a completely different person than the woman I married. She shrugged her shoulders. So what? She said. Is that all you have to say after all the years we spent together? Yeah, Samantha, I suppose so, I nodded as her words sank in. Then I realized that any affection I once had for her had vanished. Her attorney spoke forward. Mr. Jacobs, I believe our business here is completed. My client has no more to say, he said. Do you realize she might face the death penalty? I asked him. Yes, I am aware of it, Mr. Jacobs, John stated. Samantha smirked, as if she didn't care. Fine, I thought. Neither do I, good luck, I murmured, motioning Alice to depart. We returned to the corridor where I encountered Allison, who was also smirking. What's so funny? I asked her. She snorted before speaking, just wait, Mike Jacobs. A whole fresh approach is on its way, and when the sisterhood gains control, there will be no room for dinosaurs like you, she sneered. I looked at Julie, who had picked up on Allison's statement well. From where I stand, it appears that there will be no room for you either, I shot back. The door to the room opened as Samantha returned with her attorney and another marshal. John handed him the divorce papers. They are autographed, he said quietly. The marshal observed her signature. And I have notarized the papers, filed them, and requested a duplicate, Alice said as she reviewed the documentation. Thank you. She placed the box in her case, and we went our separate ways. Alice completed the paperwork and returned to the courthouse to meet Ron, but not before reminding me of our dinner arrangement. I left the courts and went outside, pausing to get a burger after my lunch. I went to a mattress store and ordered a new mattress that could be modified. Once I arrived home, I called Pop to tell him what had happened. What will happen to her? My father-in-law requested. I could hear pain and disappointment in his voice. Regardless of what Samantha had done, I liked and respected the older gentleman. He deserved to know the entire truth, but I was worried it might be too much for him to handle. It is all right. I can handle it, whatever it is, Pop said. The U.S. attorney seeks the death penalty, I stated. I heard Pop sniffle as he struggled to get control of his emotions. Do you believe they will receive it? Pop asked, his voice shaking. I do not know. I have not seen the evidence. However, based on what I've heard, none of them appear to be in good standing. She is my only child, you know, Pop replied quietly. I understand. Does she have a decent lawyer? Those feds can tear someone apart, I told him. I believe her firm has it covered, I said. Tell me something honestly, do you want this for her? Pop asked. Honestly, I just want her out of my life, and I want her to pay for any crime she committed. But I do not want her to die. Thank you for that, son, Pop said. What are you planning to do? I make plans. Move along, Pop. I'll probably be called to testify. Of course, I will tell the truth. Let the chips fall where they may. Samantha, based on my observations, has a lot of questions to answer. That will be up to the jury, I said. Pop mentioned that we talked for a while. I'm hanging up the phone. To be honest, this is a somewhat happier tone. I want my ex-wife to live. Like I have plans for her death would provide her escape. After that, I contacted Luigi's and made a reservation for 2 for that night. I didn't know what to anticipate on my date with Julie. We had met years ago while I was a federal agent. However, nothing resulted from it because we were bound by task force regulations. I had thought about what she'd be like in bed several times. When I arrived at Julie's hotel, I called to let her know I was there and on my way to her room. I was surprised when she opened the door. Julie wore her long flowing hair over her bare shoulders. She wore a short black dress that highlighted her curves wonderfully. This was the first time I had seen her in something other than a black pantsuit, and I was astounded by her attractiveness. Mike, take out your tongue, Julie inquired with a wicked smirk. You are absolutely lovely, I stammered, feeling like an eager teenage lad on his first date. Thank you, Julie responded. And I must tell you that you clean up rather well. I offered her my right arm since I required the left for my cane. She agreed, and we headed to my car. Being the gentleman that I am, I even held the car door open for her. Mike, this is a pretty lovely automobile, Julie said when I entered. Thank you. The advantages of becoming an executive. Wait till you can hear the sound system. Do you still enjoy Jethro Tull? Julie asked. I said you have to ask such a silly question. Listen to this. I turned on the system and heard sounds as thick as a wall. Yes, it's one of my all-time favorites. The point is, I knew Julie loved Tull. At least she did the last time I saw her. So where the heck was Biggles when you needed him last Saturday? And where were all the athletes who have always helped you get through? They are all resting in Cornwall, writing their memoirs for a paperback edition of the Boy Scout Manual, I said. Mike, you certainly know the way to my heart, Julie exclaimed. That is one of my favorites. There is plenty more where it came from, I told her as I pulled out of the parking lot. We arrived at Luigi's, and I eagerly escorted Julie through the door. Table for 2, Jacobs, I informed the girl at the front desk. Please, go this way, she replied with a smile after confirming my reservation. We followed the girl to our table, and I was relieved to see that it wasn't the same one where I had recently been ambushed by Samantha's lawyer, as Julie accompanied me. I could see the males in the restaurant exchanging jealous looks as our arms linked together. I felt Julie was the cutest girl in the room tonight, and she is with me. I held the chair for Julie before taking my seat and resting my cane against the wall directly beside me. A waitress approached with 2 glasses of water and took our orders. Even with your cane, you appear to be able to get around well, Julie spoke once the waitress had left. Thank you. I've had plenty of experience throughout the years, I told her. Is it still bothering you? I know they worked a lot on that leg. Even when it's terribly chilly outdoors or raining, I can't put all my weight on one knee. I appreciated Julie's concern, but I wanted to change the topic. How have you been? You were in Denver when I last saw you. Yes, I was. I got transferred to the Seattle office. I stayed there for almost 3 years before moving to Miami. That was a crazy assignment. Then I was selected for the DIA, and that is where I've stayed ever since. Julie asked, how do you like working for Ray? I've known Ray OOA for a long time and have always thought highly of him. I enjoy working with Ray, Julie exclaimed. I especially admire that he isn't a micromanager. I worked with someone like that once, and it truly irritated me. I chuckled at that. I get what you mean. So, what exactly is going on with this deal? I don't recall anything like that happening while I was in the service. Julie explained about the Divorce Investigation Unit. It's a very fresh setup following the event with Pierce. Basically, we look at the more serious claims of spousal abuse and infidelity to determine whether there is any evidence of May's involvement as a holdover or copycat. Must keep you rather busy, I observed. Unfortunately, it does, Julie lamented. I'm far busier than I would want to be. I'm just interested, how many of your situations get positive results? Julie inquired, completing my thought. Not many. On average, around 2%. That is still much more than we would like to see, I must agree. Your case was pretty interesting, how none of the normal markers were present. However, your soon-to-be ex-wife is the offspring of possibly the greatest field operative who ever worked for MI5, and your wife's attorney is a former member of the group. It drew our attention fast. Of course, I can't say much more because it has been turned over to a federal grand jury, but I can tell you that Wiseman and his steady team unearthed a lot, and it looks bad for all 3 of them. Your man Torres also discovered a couple of things that were quite helpful. I'm delighted he could help. I assume his findings have already been turned over to the proper authorities? I asked. Yes, they have, and he has been told not to share everything he has learned. National security and all that, so please don't be too harsh on him, Julie stated. I will not. Terry is a good guy. I trust him. But thank you for letting me know, I replied. You're welcome, Julie stated. So, what is this talk about a new approach and a sisterhood? I inquired, recalling our talk with Allison and Samantha earlier. Julie asked, did you catch that? Admirably, as the old mass corporate structure was demolished, the organization changed, expanded globally, and became even more radical and less concerned with matters like murder. A county commissioner from Texas was slain not long ago as part of an experiment. I trembled. Damn, we're not sure if those are the group's new names or just generic titles they employ. It could be both for all we know. The main line is that things are much more dangerous now than they were when you were in the Army. Careful is my second name, so you need to be very cautious, I said, making her laugh. Our orders came right then. We both went with Luigi's special lasagna, which is one of my favorites because it's loaded with beef and mushrooms and covered in 3 kinds of cheese. Using our breadsticks to mop up the leftover sauce, we both dove in. This is so delicious, exclaimed Julie. Julie remarked, this is one of my favorites. I can make myself sick with this stuff, and I understood why. When we're done here, there's a wonderful small dance club right next door. Would you like to go have something to drink and maybe dance off a few calories? What, me? I shot back, feigning indignation. Julie laughed and said, I think you're trying to seduce me. Why, Mike Jacobs, if I didn't know better? I asked. Yes, you are, but for the record, I'd love to have a drink and a few dances with you, assuming you can keep up with me. Well, I admit that I'm limited to slow dances these days, I laughed. Julie smiled more broadly, and her dimples came into view. God, I could get lost in those dimples. How do you deal with, I learned long ago to improvise, adapt, and conquer, I replied. Julie said in a seductive, promising voice, in that case, I'd love to have a couple of wonderful slow dances with you, Mike. I gave our waitress my credit card when she came with the check. After a few minutes, she came back to complete the task. Thankfully, the dance club wasn't overly packed when we strolled there after I paid the bill. As we entered, Julie attracted attention, and I could almost hear the men muttering to themselves as they evaluated my date. Of course, nobody knew what Julie could do to them if they crossed the boundary. We sat down and placed our drink orders. I asked Julie to dance when the band started playing the slow dance song, and she happily accepted. We walked over to the dance floor, where I put my cane in my left hand and wrapped my right arm around her. As we danced around the dance floor, Julie merged her body with mine. That was the key, slow and steady. Julie muttered, Mike, you have incredible agility, and I gave her a tight hug. She put her head on my shoulder, and I breathed in the scent of her hair. Shouting back, where there is a will, there is a means, after 2 slow songs, we went back to our table and continued dancing. Julie said softly, that was nice, as I sat down. I tried to make it a weekly event, but to be honest, the last few months were tough. I never thought of you as a dancer before. Things have changed slightly throughout the years. Personally, I found it quite beneficial during my therapy. Did you and Samantha visit here frequently? She had been cold and distant for quite some time. I thought it was just work-related stress at the time. I replied, I know better now. Enough of my problems. How did you get to know Mr. Wright? Not really, laughed Julie, I'm not sure. Maybe this is because of the nature of our work. We witness a great deal of suffering. Not quite the best environment for a relationship. I confessed that I had once met someone, but he turned out to be a jerk and a player, so I dropped him and didn't look back. I am sad to hear that, I told her. Do not be, Julie scoffed. I'm just glad I found out before it became too late. Julie sighed. I get what you mean, Julie said. Yes, so tell me about your current plans. I intend to remain in the task force. In a few years, I want to retire. That's a hell of a remark, right? I thought about buying a condo on the beach somewhere and living there with a cat or something. I think so, Julie answered. I tried to lighten the conversation because I could see how depressed she was. What say we blast this joint, perhaps bring some music or something? Do you still have that assortment of tools? Julie responded. Yes, I do, I responded to her. I've even added to it since we last saw each other. Julie, please, take me to your parlor. What are you waiting for? She asked, putting her arms around my shoulders. Startled, I questioned, where did that come from? Julie said, this is from a book I read online. Yes, ma'am, I replied, holding onto my cane. Are we going or what? We left the club and went to my house after paying our bill. Upon our arrival, I gave Julie a brief tour of the building, ending in my office, where I stored my tall vinyl stash. I don't care what people say, nothing beats the music from those vintage LPs, I replied. When I let Julie select the CD she wanted to listen to, I was surprised that she selected a Passion Play. I put the CD on the turntable and turned on my stereo. The music filled the house as we made our way to the front room. We poured some wine, settled back on the couch, and enjoyed the music. I turned the record over and started playing side 2 after I had finished the first side. The story of the hare who lost his spectacles amused Julie, and she started laughing. And after all, she did have a pair, I said, returning to the front room as Julie was still laughing as the story came to a close. What's so funny? As the music went on, I asked, I wonder why, but the story always makes me laugh. Julie said, set down her wineglass, turned to face me, unbuttoned my shirt, ran a hand over my chest, and looked intently into my eyes. Mike, have you ever wondered why she never seemed to finish her sentences? The reason for this is that, even with Samantha, the hottest kiss I've ever experienced occurred between our lips. Yes, many times, I whispered as she broke off the kiss and looked at me. Our tongues fought for what seemed like eternity, she said. After climbing over me and straddling my legs to pull her short dress up to her waist, Julie wrapped her arms around my neck and planted another kiss on my lips. She broke the kiss and whispered in my ear, "Make love with me, Mike," giving me the impression that I didn't need to be coaxed anymore. Before I knew it, clothes were flying off of both of us, and it was wild. For a short while, we lay there on the couch exhausted, staring at each other's faces as the intensity of our relationship faded. Eventually, Julie said, "I think the song is almost finished." She was right, I thought as I listened to her. There was a rush along Fulham Road to the always entertaining show. "I think you're right," I said. "So I guess this is our song," Julie smiled back. "Yeah, our song," she answered. "How about you play the album, please?" I said. She kissed my face and got up from my lap, and I got up with the aid of my cane. We had a passionate lay for life bursting out, and then I went back to the front room and fell onto the couch, drawing Julie's attention to the scar on my thigh. "Are you all right? How are you doing now?" I inquired. "It's just that I haven't seen your scar before," she replied. "It's much better now," I said. "If this upsets you, I can put my pants back on." Julie begged, "No, don't. It is a part of you." "That's worse than I expected." "That doesn't worry me." Julie seemed to be in great shape, but upon closer inspection, I saw some red streaks on her torso. "It happened in Seattle, a knife battle," she said. "I have a few scars of my own, you know." "You ought to see the other person." "Is it upsetting you?" I paused for a moment before asking, "Would you like to spend the night?" "Not at all," I replied. "You are great just the way you are." Julie put her arms around me and smiled brightly, lighting up the room. "I assumed you would never ask," she said, leaving our clothes in the front room as we went upstairs. "I hope you do not mind if we use the guest bedroom. The master bedroom's mattress is getting replaced." We laughed about that and crawled into the guest bed to cuddle for a while. "This explains the box springs," Julie said. "I assumed you had some odd fetish or something. It's really been a long time coming, you have no idea." "I'm glad you enjoyed it." "I found it enjoyable as well." "To be honest, I didn't want it to end," Julie said with a smile before planting a kiss on my cheek, and the two of us dozed off in each other's arms. The next morning, I smelled bacon. I used the master bathroom to relieve myself, then I changed into some casual clothes and went downstairs to find Julie in the kitchen, wearing only one of my long-sleeved shirts. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said with a smile, passing me a cup of coffee. "Breakfast is almost completed." "Do you realize that you are going to get spoilt?" I asked, putting a kiss on her lips. "Isn't this the idea?" she replied. I smiled at that. She reappeared bringing 2 dishes of eggs, bacon, and bread. She handed me one and placed the other in front of her. "This is fantastic," I spoke after taking a bite of the eggs. "Thank you," Julie replied. "It is difficult to screw up an egg." "But maybe," I said, "maybe you cooked it when you didn't have to." Julie said, her face sorrowful, "Thank you for last night. I really needed that. It was the nicest night I'd had in a very long time, I think we both did. Although I wish it could never end, I recognize that you have work to do." "Yes, I have work to do, but it's not too far to get to Fort Apache. Weekends are something we have every weekend. In addition, I'm going to retire in a few years. We'll have more time to get to know one another better as a result. What do you think?" I said to her, "I'd love that." I felt really connected to Samantha last night and hadn't felt her in a long time. I agree, Julie replied. I want you to know that I don't usually spend the night. And I want to make sure it wasn't just two ships sailing through the night. I've been drawn to you and you to me for a long time, just like we did last night. Mike, is that a but I hear in your voice? I don't want to be your go-to partner in a second marriage. You have a long road ahead of you as you have just started your divorce. I've seen what divorce does to people, so believe me. I promise to be there for you whenever you need me, even though it's not pretty. I tried to sound neutral as I said, thank you for that. How about we just take it slow and easy for a bit? If you would like, I can come over and hang out with you on the weekends. Kindly give me a call whenever you need to talk. Before you ask, no, I do not have a boyfriend somewhere else, so there's no need to rush. Julie's words made sense, and after giving them some thought, I said, all right. You are welcome here at any moment, I retorted. Naturally, I would like to see you on the weekends. You are aware that I may need to work on certain weekends, correct? She answered, yeah, I'm fully aware of this. Have you been there and done that? Julie laughed at this, remembering, I will never forget, but I do need to get dressed. Holding her top open, Julie continued, I have a meeting with the U.S. attorney this afternoon, and I doubt he'd enjoy me turning up like this. That made me smile. I'm not sure. You are really naughty, Julie chided. I rather enjoy seeing you dressed that manner, especially at my table, I laughed. Yes, I am, I joked back. We hugged and kissed for a little while before Julie went upstairs to get dressed. I grinned when I saw her adorable little bare hips swing under my shirt before she cleared the table and did the dishes. After 30 minutes, Julie came back downstairs, all dolled up and ready to head back to her hotel, so I gave her my keys and she followed me to the car, and when we got to the motel, she leaned over and planted another hot, promise-filled kiss on my lips. What's on your dinner menu for tonight? Surprised, I asked. Julie grinned and said, surprise me. I have to fly back to Fort Apache tomorrow morning. Do you really think you could put up with me being here one more night? I think I'm up to the task. But I have a date. I guess I'll just have to tell my other girlfriends, I joked. She slapped my arm and said, yes, right. I'll call after I'm finished. Okay, that sounds really good. This is the security code for the alarm. By the way, you might as well get this, I said, passing Julie the house key. I also pulled out a card with the code. You have less than a minute to enter the code when you open the door. I waited until Julie was inside the motel, then I drove to the office. Thank you for that, Julie replied, taking the card and giving me one more kiss full of promise before getting out of the car and closing the door. What are we haphazardly working on today? I laughed as I walked into Jack's office. And nobody told me? Jack asked as I entered the executive office suite. You certainly seem to be in a better mood today. Is everything operating smoothly? In many ways, I answered. Yes, it is, I said. And did you see Terry, by the way? I must talk to him. Jack said, I will call him then. I haven't seen him, but I'm sure he is somewhere around here. Not very important. What happened at the arraignment? Better than anticipated. Currently detained in federal custody, Samantha and her accomplices are traveling to Washington. I told him that it looked like a federal grand jury was looking into them. Interesting, Jack said. So, are you coming back for good? I guess I'll be good to go at this point. But I do have a date tonight. A time slot? Yes, you do, Mike, very quickly. Who is she? Jack inquired. Julie Bockham is her name. Together, we attended the service. In a few years, she intends to retire. So you like going on dates then? Don't do anything I wouldn't do, Jack joked. Laughing, I said, yes, right. I brought up this earlier and then headed to my office, where I called Terry. Hello, boss. I was just about to visit you. Is everything in order? Terry inquired. Yeah, I just wanted to offer you my final report. I'm excited about that. Terry said, I'll be there in about 5 minutes, and hung up. As promised, Terry showed up in my office 4 minutes later with a heavy folder that he gave to me. Well, you've been busy, I said to him, holding up the bulky folder. I take it you sent a copy of this to Miss Hawkins and the feds? Yes, Terry reported. Special Agent Bacham appeared glad to receive it. A large portion of the information in that report you already know. I was given an entire file about William's background and Morrison's separation from Samantha. It was not attractive. Did you forward a copy to William's New York-based wife? I inquired. Terry answered, Not yet, but I will if you wish. I said, Please do, and Terry replied, It's done. What about the photos? Sure, I had a conversation with my audio-video guy. He admits that they appear to be printouts of Photoshop digital photos. It is hard to comment further without seeing the original digital data, though. I thought, logically, this makes sense. In any case, everything is available. All the information I could find in a matter of days. I hope it is useful. I said, Yes, Terry, it does. Nice work. Regards. You have my undying gratitude. Terry grinned and said, My pleasure, boss. Well, I need to get back to it. Tell me if you need anything else at all. We will do, Terry. I told him so, we shook hands, and I watched him walk out of the office. I spent the next few hours going through the package Terry had assembled, wondering if I had ever really known Samantha. I closed the folder and threw it on my desk, thinking it was all academic since the grand jury had the final say. After finishing the rest of my work, I realized it was lunchtime, so I went outside for a sandwich. I planned Julie's evening meal, thinking I would take her to the new restaurant, but then I realized it was lunchtime, so I went outside for a sandwich. I returned to the office after lunch and checked in with Jack. Jack, if it's okay with you, I'd like to leave a little early. I said, I have to stop at the store on my way home. Yeah, sure, Mike, Jack replied. We have everything under control here. I'm grateful, Jack. Thank you, I waved back as I headed to the store, where I picked up 2 thick steaks, potatoes, and all the fixings. Before I left for home, I also grabbed a bottle of wine. While I was preparing the meat, my phone buzzed and I saw Julie, so I answered. She said, Hey, man, when I answered. It was a while since I'd heard her say that, so I grinned. Hey, you, I answered. How are you doing so far this day? Something interesting, Julie said. I called to see what you had planned for dinner. I'm currently cutting up some steaks. I'm going to grill some steaks and serve them with green beans and baked potatoes. What is the sound of that? Yes, meat. I love steak that's been grilled at home, Julie exclaimed. I said in jest, Your wish is my command. What's new? Julie whispered, Yeah, I will tell you when I meet you tonight. I'm looking forward to that. I just have to change, pack, and check out at the motel. Assuming you still desire that I spend the night. I said, Of course, and everything was well. We said our goodbyes and ended the call. I went back to getting ready, grinning as a favorite song came on the house stereo. I'll see you in a bit. When the doorbell rang, I answered and saw Julie carrying a closed bag and an overnight bag, inviting her in just as the window opened. Shifting the dancing candle flame and the first moths of June's suicidal thoughts came to mind. You know there's no need to ring the doorbell, I replied. Thank you, Mike, Julie said as she walked in. I can already smell the barbecue. As of now, I have not added any meat. I wanted to hold off until you arrived. By the way, how do you like yours? Seldom? I mean, it's so out of the ordinary that it almost makes a woman fall in love with me, I joked. Let me take this stuff upstairs, and I'll be right out, Julie said. Do you require assistance with that? I made a suggestion. I went outside, grilled the food, and opened the wine. Julie came back down, put her arm around my waist, and kissed me on the cheek. That small gesture gave me more love than Samantha had given me in a long time. I've got it, but thank you for offering anyhow, Julie replied as she ascended the stairs. Is the food prepared? May I ask? She inquired. I picked up a couple of dishes and piled them high with steaks and potatoes. We went into the kitchen, topped the potatoes with sour cream and butter, and Julie said, "This sounds so good, Mike." I hope you enjoy it, I said, noting that I hadn't grilled anything in a very long time. I'm confident I'll like it. It's been a while since a man prepared food for me. I'll take over the kitchen next time, all right? It's what she advised. I saw her take her first bite of steak, closed her eyes, and sighed as she finished it. You're on, I said. This is wonderful, Mike. Perfect. I appreciate you saying that, she remarked. After dinner, we struck up a conversation. Julie insisted on washing the dishes, which I granted, and we went to the front room for a glass of wine. So, what noteworthy events occurred today, after we were seated on the couch? I asked. She saw the expression on my face and said, yes, we reviewed the evidence from Cartwright's house. I expected them to execute the search warrant, but I was unaware that they had already done so. I probably ought to have told you. The day following her arrest, the FBI conducted a home raid. To start, we had a lot of findings. They found the photos and the digital files Cartwright had created. Unbelievably, over the years, she has targeted hundreds of guys with the same basic images. Oh my God, I exclaimed. You may rephrase it. We also possess data regarding all the accounts that Cartwright can access. These funds are all temporarily blocked. Millions more than we initially thought are at stake. So, she has been operating this fraud for years, I replied. Indeed. I should note that Samantha helped me out. We also found some illegal Spacey movies on William's thumb drive, which we also found on Cartwright's computer, but it seems like she used those, combined with the fake photos, as leverage against her targets. In addition to Cartwright and William's plot against you, we have evidence that connects them to at least 3 murders. They seem to be going to be behind bars for a very long time. Well, if Ryan gets his way, the needle will go to all 3 of them, I continued, Julie said. The investigators might need several months to go through all of the data, so we'll just have to wait and see what the grand jury finds. From what I've seen, maybe in a few years. But what about all the men Cartwright screwed over? May I ask? I said. That's a whole other can of worms, said Julie. I expect every divorce Cartwright handled to go before a judge, and there will be a ton of lawsuits. Your attorney Alice is thrilled about it, I laughed. She definitely is. It's going to be chaos, regardless, Julie exclaimed. It would be legally shocking if Hempstead survived the fallout, so I guess you have your work cut out for the next few years, Julie gave a nod of her head. Yes, Ray got me back on track, so I'll be at Fort Apache or here. I told her, at least you won't have to worry about where to stay while you're here. I'll probably have to go to Washington from time to time. Julie put her arms around my neck and smiled. No, I don't. I told her I'd never get bored of that. I just hope you don't get tired of having me in your bed. We shared another glass of wine and then threw ourselves into each other's arms for our second romantic evening. Everything in my divorce went according to plan. By the time Alice concluded her claims, over 600 men, including Alvin, had gotten a substantial payment. Alice cut her share in more than half, but she still left with enough cash for her retirement. Hempstead survived despite negative press and judicial reviews, almost failing. Julie estimated that it would take 26 months to wrap up the FBI investigation. After the investigation, Samantha, Allison, and Alan were charged with several offenses, including first-degree premeditated murder, by a federal grand jury. Ron, the lead U.S. attorney in the case, requested that all 3 of them be executed. Julie commuted from Fort Apache to my home in Washington, D.C., for 26 months. I enjoyed having her by my side, and our relationship developed to the point where, just a few days prior to Samantha's sentencing hearing, I proposed to her. As I placed the engagement ring on Julie's finger, she remarked, "I assumed you would never ask." We had an unbridled night of passion to celebrate. Pop was even more delighted for us when Julie selected him to be her special walking partner down the aisle. In return for accepting wrongdoing and spending her days in prison, Samantha was given the opportunity to leave her group of bad friends behind. She wisely accepted the offer, causing Pop to sigh with relief. She revealed everything because of her words once everything was in place. Allison and Alan, who lost everything to his ex in a split second, received the harshest punishment after being found guilty on all counts. After Samantha was sent to Washington, I saw her twice. The first was when I was called upon to testify at the trial and they asked me to tell the truth. She sat there looking dejected while I did so. The hearing where they decide what happens next was the next. Julie and Pop accompanied me. Samantha had a rough appearance. Her once luxurious hair was now disheveled and revealed gray. Her face was riddled with lines, as though she had aged several decades. When they told her what she was up against, her expression was pure hate. "Happy now?" she growled. "To be really honest, I've never felt better," I said, glancing at Julie. Samantha averted her gaze just as I noticed a tear in her eye. My gaze shifted to Allison, who appeared equally battered and exhausted. I said, "I told you I don't like losing." With a slight smile, Allison lowered her gaze to the table. I was eager to move on and start over. Hello, those who are listening. Hi there. Please feel free to forward these contents to your friends and family if you find them useful. In addition, as is customary, if you like this video, please click the like button to support our podcast in reaching a larger audience on YouTube, as the platform favors videos with a high number of likes. You might also think about becoming a subscriber to the channel so you can be notified whenever I post something new. YouTube will let you know as appropriate. I appreciate your help, and I hope you have an amazing day.